A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to today's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toivon Jabela, your host. Tonight we are very happy to have the Deputy Minister of Finance and Public Enterprises, Maureen Hinda-Mbuende. She is also an active member of the ruling party Swapo and was very, very active there at the recent Congress. So we are here to talk about sort of her mandate in government, but I think topically the Swapo Congress. Minister, thank you for making time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. You were one of the observers at the Swapo Congress, and you had first-hand experience of what was going on there. A lot of people felt that it was pretty chaotic. There had to be recounts. There were a lot of letters flying around, legal threats and whatnot. If you can give me an assessment of what you saw.
I think in my opinion, of course, it is the first time that I was an observer at the party congress.
Yeah.
But I believe it was the best run and most transparent election process because all the top three positions candidates had appointed observers.
Yeah.
And the mandate of the observers were to observe even the design process of the ballot papers, printing process, packaging, sealing it off, transportation to the venue, and the election process. After elections closed, a certain time was allowed to allow if there were people still coming, which I think there were a few people who didn't make it. Because as per the voters' roll, we had a little bit more people. So we gave that space. Ballot polling station closed. Sealing happened of the ballot boxes. Reconciliation of who has, how many people have voted, how many ballot papers were used. And then the actual counting started with the top three. What is also peculiar is that the ballot papers for the top three were having a secret seal. And the ballot papers for the Central Committee members had numbers from 001. The printing happened at NAMPrint. We were all present. We signed off through, observed all the processes, and printing could only happen for 500 at a time. So 1,000 ballot papers were printed. We had earlier decided that we would only have 900. And therefore, the 100 after packaging were threaded in the presence of everybody. So what we carried for the Central Committee was 001 up to 900, and then 900, which were all packed in 300 packages. I think it was highly professional. After opening happened for the top three, one by one.
Yeah.
First, so after opening, ballots were counted, the total, then reconciled if everything was accounted for. And also for the colors were different. For vice presidency, there was one color was blue, one was red, one was green. So you could, from a distance, see if it is in a wrong box. So I think one or two were thrown in a wrong box. It was resorted. Everybody confirmed the seals that they have put on the box when it was opened before counting happened. So everybody was happy. And every stage, the leader of that observer team of the specific candidate had to sign confirmation of happiness. Then it was for the top three, of course, displayed publicly and sorted, and then counted and reconciled. And everybody signed off for it. And I was in particular then the observer for Herunga, the deputy minister, Herunga for the deputy SG position. And so I have witnessed that process as well. I think because of time management, the SG counting and the deputy SG counting happened simultaneously because we had separate observers. So that process went the same way. It was separated in 3 blocks, reconciled the totals, counted one by one, added up, percentage worked out. And then at the end, we then looked at the percentages, and nobody had 51 plus as per the requirement.
Yeah.
And therefore, we had to agree that there will be a runner-off. Of course, they were, as observers, you are just an observer. You're not supposed to interfere.
Yeah.
However, so there were discussions between the Gombe and his team as to like how would they go about this. And amongst ourselves as observers of the respective candidates, we also had our own conversations. Atmosphere in the counting room was very positive. You know, like, it was not like people observing for different people. Everybody was cooperating, everybody was having tea together, we sharing our snacks. We slept there almost 2 nights. So there was cooperation between us. And in conclusion, of course, because of the 50-50 provision of the party constitution, and traditionally we have kept to the 50-50.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, of course, the reference is made to say Congress have to ensure that 2 of those top 4 positions are held by women. And I think using that basis, Mr. Gombe, as the presiding officer, made the ruling that the runner-off would be between the 2 men and exclude the female because of the outcome of, first of all, the presidency, which is a male, vice president which was won by a female, Secretary General won by Sophia Shanika, female, and they concluded then that the Deputy Secretary General has to go for a male.
Yeah.
That decision was not discussed with us, the conclusion thereof.
Yeah.
It was announced, and I think it was the presiding officer's decision. If you ask me my personal opinion, I would say, unless if the Constitution had said at least 2 women, then you could have said it can be more than 2. But if it specifically say Congress have to ensure that 2 of those positions are taken up by women, it will imply that it talks about 2 and not 3. So 2 were already taken, and therefore logically I am in agreement with the ruling that was made by the presiding officer. Fortunately or unfortunately, the person that has won was for whom I have observed, and I have signed it off, and I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate everybody who has won. But the process was transparent, counting was transparent, because we went through the same process for the rerun. Literally, they had to go back to Namprint, print new ballot papers for the 2 only, came back and count, election happened again. Everybody in the Congress had to come back. I think we were short with few numbers, but still the majority of the people were present and they voted, and we went through the same observation process, and a winner was declared by the presiding officer, which was obviously also has taken oath already.
Absolutely. What if, Maureen, what if the minister, what if for the deputy SG position, what if Evelyn Navas-Style had won that race? If there was no a need for a rerun, she had just won, she had gotten 70%.
I think Congress would still have had the obligation to look at it.
Would it take away a democratic voice of the people if that was the case? Because
the democratic voice of the people have put rules. And I think when you put rules, even if the rule works against yourself, you need to uphold it. I think it has shown the possibility that you could come up with such positions. And I think for future, maybe the next Congress could look at how would we deal with that? Would we amend to probably say at least? Or the same question will come. What if the first vice presidency was won by Shifeta?
Exactly.
And what if the Secretary General position was won by Armas?
Exactly.
Would we have nullified that? And I think the principle should apply. If that answer is yes, then the answer for Deputy SG should be yes. I think we must look at this thing objectively and take out the emotions.
Yeah. Do you think, Minister, that given what Swapo had gone through, and you're a veteran member and a senior member of the party now as a deputy minister and all that, that there is indeed now, because the rules now seem to be left very much to interpretation, and that is very dangerous. Do you think that in the next 5 years, Swapo must use that break to really solidify the provisions and be very, very clear? Because I had Pahamba Shifeta on this show before Congress, and his interpretation was that the gender balance element only applies at nominations, that for each position there must be a balance in the people nominated to contest for that position. But once a democratic process has taken place, which is elections, and people have decided to go for whoever they decided to go for, that you respect that democratic. How do you say no? You all want, 90% of you want this person, but because she's a woman, we are going to take her away. That cannot be correct.
I think that is the issue of policy. That's why you make rules. At the time, it was convenient to have more women on the board. And therefore, even if men had more votes, even if, let's say, for example, if you're competing, and even if they had more votes, if you have 500 votes and you compete with your men, and a woman with 300 could probably still come in. So it is applicable to Central Committee. It has been applicable to, even at section levels, when we elect district secretary and a district info and mob and a district treasurer. The rule has always been there must at least be one woman if there are 3 positions. So what, in that case, if we say if it was about democracy and the will of the people, even if the section members would want all men, policy was imposed to say there must be at least women to bring that gender imperative. So I think today when it becomes, rules goes across board. And unfortunately, if it was good yesterday, it should be good today. And if we think that we have reached gender parity and we don't need quotas for women, or that would help to ensure that we have women representation anymore, then we must say so. Then women compete at equal footing. There are other arguments that talks about it is meant to ensure minimum number of women and not the maximum. But I think customarily that's how we were operating. It was strictly 50-50, and where there was uneven number, still at least, then there would still be a balance. But even if position is probably for 5 people, you could never have 4 men or even 4 women for that matter. So we have set standards. And as far as I'm concerned, the candidate for which I have witnessed the process has fairly won. He was the best, overall best. And then he had a rerun and he won. Of course, maybe if the presiding officer had differently ruled to say it was the top 2, maybe the third candidate could have also still built an argument. So in my opinion, I think that matter has to just go to court. It cannot be undone. The person is sworn in. There was a ruling by the presiding officer, and the person is sworn in, and they themselves cannot just undo it. It can only be undone through a court of law. If I can use the ticket of my brother to play legal advisor here.
Yeah, wonderful. We go for a quick break and return for the second part of the show.
At OK Furniture, we know you work hard all year so you can give your loved ones a festive season filled with cheer. So to help you enjoy the Christmas you want, we save you money on the home essentials you need. Save on the 32-inch Omega HD-ready digital TV, now only 1799, or this Bradford Lounge Suite, just 8999. Only at OK Furniture, where we save you money.
The show continues with Deputy Minister of Finance, Maureen Hinda. Now, Minister, if you said that just because you are painting this picture of a process that had gone so well, but this is the same process that had to go for a recount. This is the same process for which the presiding officer had to be gotten rid of, and a new one brought in to preside over the elections for Politburo yesterday. How could that have been?
How can I explain that?
Yes,
No,
please.
I think it's very easy to understand the difference. Unfortunately, we were observers for the individual candidates and not for the Central Committee.
Yeah.
And we were at liberty. We couldn't just take over that responsibility of observing.
Yeah.
After all, we were so exhausted anyway. So we didn't observe. Of course, we have observed the closing part of it. We have observed the reconciliation of the ballot paper, so we knew that the last paper that was not used had the number 785, meaning 784 ballots were issued with one written, so there were 783 voters that has cast their votes. So we didn't observe beyond that point. Unfortunately, of course, because of the rerun as well, and it happened simultaneously, my candidate was in the rerun, so I had to observe the same process again. So there was another voting happening whilst voting was counted. Ballots were counted on the other side. So we couldn't do that simultaneously. But what then happened is, I think, initially when people congregated for the second announcement, it was also made practical. Never did we have two levels of announcement. But because of the rerun outcome, it was necessary to then have, it was practical to have a first announcement for the first results and announce then the position for the rerun. It was on the Congress floor, and then went for the print. So I think whoever had objections should have registered the objection there. That probably could have been discussed or debated by the Congress. But needless to say, when the second results were to be announced, I think time pressure had taken its toll, according to his explanation to the presiding officer, that he made announcement. For me, the main list seems not to be so different, although the totals probably final was different, and it could have been because our counting was meticulous. So obviously we have gotten rid of all the spoiled ballots and so on. So that could have played a role with the male list. But it was so obvious that for the female list, one, there were no numbers, votes obtained. Two, it was literally alphabetical order from number 1 up to number 35 that was read. So it is understandable or it is, for me, an acceptable explanation when the presiding officer was so bold to stand up and say, I must have made a mistake.
Yeah.
Because it was just A, B, C, D, E, F, you know.
Absolutely.
So no literate people could have just voted for the first 34, all of them, and had nobody else's ballots. So I think it was definitely human error in probably having just opened the computer on the wrong page, and the person who was reading it was not part of the process, so did not probably necessarily realize what was happening. But it was also admitted that the auditor did not certify those results because it was not verified. And therefore, when they started reading that, she stepped off the stage because she was not part of that as well. There were extensive conversations, but interestingly, immediately after the results, and when people realized actually it was an alphabetical list of the ballot paper, they literally camped in front of the room where the stationery, the voting stationery was kept for those 2 days for decision to be taken what to happen. And they wrote the petition. Petition was signed even by people who were successful. That for me, I think it has just taken democracy and transparency within Swapo to the next level. What we did with the recount, of course, was we had a projector so everybody could see we had the one person and 4 computers where input were done. But the main computer was only managed by the auditor herself, and it was projected. The one officer that was reading the ballot paper, per ballot paper, was sandwiched by 2 observers that were changing now and then. We make sure there's one from every side or every player.
Yeah.
So literally what you're reading is verified and what is put on the screen is verified. Total ballot or votes per that person was verified, and then if it is spoiled, if it is either 35, 34, 36 votes, if it was less than that, it was nullified, but it was still kept.
Yeah.
So at the end, we had the reconciliation in terms of the number of votes, whatever, and make sure that there were no secret codes in between.
Yeah.
All that was verified. So I think we were meticulous.
I hear you.
And so therefore, what went in is what came out.
Okay. Why do you think that the people aligned to Deputy Prime Minister Hinda-Mbuende, whether it's in terms of the top 4 or the Central Committee and now yesterday the Politburo, why do you think everything came out in favor of those that supported her? Is it due to the manner in which you guys campaigned, or there are other factors?
In fact, I must say, first of all, the campaign of Hinda-Mbuende was based on the mantra of ethical leadership, and I think that was the killer. And but what I also want to add is that it has created a new atmosphere. It's almost like a culture change, that Namibians want to live up to ethical leadership, and they're demanding for ethical leadership. I think it's a paradigm shift to be appreciated, so that going forward, we should see everybody in the actions that they do should want to uphold what is right. It is moving away from the notion of saying innocent until proven guilty, because that is for the court of law. But the moral value statement is about ethical leadership. And I think that differentiates. Because previously, people could misunderstood that, after all, I can steal as long as I'm not caught. It's not wrong as long as I'm not caught, you know, as long as I'm not proven guilty. But now it has shifted to the individual to take decisions guided by a value system. And I think it takes us as a whole country to the next level. And based for that reason, it was not so easy, it could simply not be an easy job to persuade a person through a bribe or through a promise or anything else, because otherwise your promise or your bribe or your tip would be interpreted as unethical.
Yeah.
And therefore, even if the person accepts your gift, they would still perceive you as wanting to pay for a vote which is unethical. Yeah. So I think it kept the group together. But what is important to mention is that as a group, we never decampaigned anybody. Therefore, we have a balanced Central Committee outcome. Central Committee outcome is very balanced, inclusive, and I would have thought it will bring about also a new working relationship, that we should all want to work for the best interests of the party. And I think that was the understanding. As a person that was looking at each ballot paper, I could see that people that have voted mainly for our candidates had a balanced voting principle, whereas the other people were very exclusive. But thanks God, we had a balanced Central Committee that we should be proud of. And I think if everybody takes it on that we, for the first time, have diverse views around one table, if we all would want to work for the good of the party and for the best interest, or to the best interest of the country, I think it can only, cooperation is inevitable.
Absolutely. In 1 minute, Minister, the President hinted at Congress, he hinted, in fact, not hinted, he spoke on record that there will be an extraordinary Congress in 2024 and that somebody must take over from him, and only then would the party decide who their candidate in 2024 election will be. And that caught a lot of people off guard in not so many words. What is your impression of that?
Actually, probably not to be interpreted, what the president said is clear, that he said there will be an extraordinary Congress. I don't know how the resolutions have recorded it, whether it is a resolution of Congress or whether it is minuted as, because it was a view presented, a statement made by the president and not debated, and therefore probably not a resolution. But what I pick up from some people on the ground is they use some arguments of saying there will be a vacancy in the presidency and therefore there should be a new election held for presidency, and whatever. I think there is some provision that says that if you have not served, you have to serve for a year in the position where you are seated before you can compete for the next level. And I think that is what I heard on the platforms, people talking about Notumbo wouldn't have been for a year. So it means that the impression is that the Congress, the extraordinary Congress, should be before December 2023, so that he has not yet made a year and therefore cannot compete for the next position. But she has been there for 5 years. So it will be year 6 and not year 1. So every cycle cannot be counted as a new cycle. So even that argument on the social media debates are defeated by the members of the party.
Yeah.
But I would leave that to the Politburo and the Central Committee and the top 4 to give guidance, and we will follow. But I think people are determined to see the change in the paradigm shift. They're determined to uphold this mantra of ethical leadership, and I think therefore Notumbo seems to have solid support.
Yeah.
So if any competition, she should definitely be able to win that.
Wonderful.
As well.
Wonderful. Minister, I wish we had more time, but you did very well. I will invite you again as more things come up, other topics. We needed to also address a few things regarding your ministry, but we will address those when time comes. I wish you a very good Christmas, you and your family, Ms. Mbuende, and the children. So thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. That is today's show with Maureen Hinda-Mbuende.